Ultraviolet radiation and other factors gradually changed the atmosphere. They brought it to its present state. In fact, an Earth without an atmosphere is a realistic scenario. This could occur as a result of a strong impact from a meteorite. The gas molecules would gain enough speed to move beyond the gravitational pull of the planet, and some of the atmosphere would just blow out into space. To understand how important it is for the planet, just look at Mars. It lost most of its atmosphere about 4 billion years ago. Only a thin layer remains, and as such, Mars isn't a comfortable place to live. On Earth, too, there are examples of partial destruction of the atmosphere, ozone holes. These are weak areas of ozone concentration in the ozone layer. But even this change in the atmosphere has serious consequences. The flow of ultraviolet solar radiation increases, which leads to the development of cancer. Not to mention the negative impact on wild and domestic animals, crops, and the environment in general. But what happens if it's not just an ozone hole? Let's say that somewhere there's a huge toggle switch for controlling the atmosphere, and right now, it's been turned off for 5 seconds. First of all, it would be very quiet. An elastic medium is necessary for the propagation of sound waves. Without an atmosphere, the waves would simply have nowhere to move. That's why you can't hear anything when you're in space. Under such conditions, you'd be able to feel vibrations from the Earth's crust, but nothing more. If you just recently admired the pink sky at sunset, you can now forget about it. The sky will no longer have any shades other than black. For it to change color, you need an atmosphere. The sun's rays are dispersed through it, and without an atmosphere, there would no longer be a blue sky. Remember the pictures taken on the moon's surface? That's how it would look. But the sky and silence are the least of our problems. Everything that was in the air at the time of the shutdown of the atmosphere would fall to the ground. And I mean literally everything. Birds, planes, even insects. Without air, they simply wouldn't be able to fly. If a meteor hit the Earth at this moment, nothing would stop it. Do you think this sounds like the apocalypse? It is. All internal combustion engines would fail. Oceans, lakes, and rivers would also start behaving strangely. Without an atmosphere, the boiling point of water would drop significantly. This means that all of the water on Earth would instantly start boiling, which is about 71% of the planet. While the planet is boiling, let's see if we could survive on it. Well, it's going to be difficult. Without an atmosphere, all life on Earth would be in a vacuum. Some creatures could survive under such conditions. For example, tardigrades. But for most living things, even 5 seconds in a vacuum would be deathly torture. Can you imagine saliva boiling in your mouth? But the most important thing in this situation is to not hold your breath. Of course, when you run out of air, that's what you want to do. Holding your breath would cause your lungs to immediately burst and cause a quick and very painful death. If you exhaled, you'd stay alive for about 90 seconds. However, in 15 seconds, you would lose consciousness. But this isn't so important because the atmosphere would disappear for only 5 seconds, so you would soon come to your senses. Another serious problem is the sun's rays. The Earth's atmosphere protects us from dangerous ultraviolet radiation. Without such a shield, even sunscreen wouldn't save you. You may not get a fatal burn in 5 seconds, but it's unlikely you would remain healthy. The only way to avoid danger would be by staying on the dark side of the Earth during this time. But 5 seconds would pass. When the atmosphere returned, the planet wouldn't be the same. Over time, life on it could get better. But what if the atmosphere disappeared forever? Let's go back to the point where the seas and oceans were boiling. The water wouldn't boil completely. Even if the atmosphere disappeared for a long time, the consequences would be different. Eventually, the steam would be enough to stop the boiling, and all that's left would freeze. It would get really cold, about minus 18 degrees Celsius. That's about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Water vapor from the oceans would act as a greenhouse gas, gradually increasing the temperature. Over time, this would lead to a rampant greenhouse effect, which in turn would make our planet more like Venus than Mars. Organisms that need air to breathe would die. Plants and land animals would die. Fish would die. Most aquatic organisms would also die. However, some bacteria would survive, so losing the atmosphere wouldn't kill all life on Earth. But what about people? As I said, if you didn't hold your breath, you could stay conscious for about 15 seconds. Even if you had an oxygen mask handy, it would be completely useless. While breathing, your body uses the pressure difference between the air in your lungs and the air outside. Without atmospheric pressure, you wouldn't be able to take a single breath. You could survive without the atmosphere, but you'd have to prepare for this in advance. For example, you could build radiation-shielded domes on the Earth's surface, or create a dome underwater. All this would help to protect you from harmful cosmic radiation and learn to survive under new conditions. Meanwhile, volcanoes and geothermal sources would emit carbon dioxide. Ultraviolet radiation would help form oxygen. Together, all of this would gradually create a new atmosphere. It would contain much less nitrogen. Its quantity could only be replenished by meteor impacts. In any case, it would take millions of years. What if the entire atmosphere didn't disappear, but only the oxygen, by itself as a chemical element? It turns out that the consequences could be much worse than what I've already described. Even if the planet only existed for 5 seconds without it, almost every object we use daily would turn to dust. Oxygen is an important part of other compounds, such as water, quartz, and ozone. Humanity would lose cars, roads, homes, and even clothing. You could also say goodbye to every concrete building on the planet. The fact is that oxygen is an important binding component in concrete. The ozone would disappear, and along with it, the ozone layer. The sun would start frying the Earth. Without oxygen, all water would become gas and then evaporate into space. Even the Earth's crust would see its end, because it's about 47% oxygen. But you wouldn't have to witness this apocalypse. Our cells, which contain a lot of water, would also turn into gas and evaporate. Humanity itself would become dust. 75% of the matter we're made of would break down. Only a trace of nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus would remain. Perhaps Thanos from Marvel just eliminated all of the oxygen inside of everyone. The effect would be similar to this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click on the bell to receive timely notifications of the release of new, interesting videos that are waiting for you ahead.